And good morning. We're officially live only on onedealaway.com. This is Money Matters. My name is Nev. And every morning at 7 a.m., we go live to talk about what's going on in the world of, well, money and business. Because at the end of the day, whether you are in business, you're not in business, everybody is in money. And it should be one of the most important things that you continue to educate yourself on because it impacts everybody. And that is why money matters and why all of us are involved here. Now, today's episode, we're going to cover what's going on in the world of economics and finance, catch up with what happened with the employment slash unemployment, because they're sort of the opposite sides of the same equation. We're going to cover what's been happening with the stocks, what's going on outside of U.S., brief sort of a Europe component to take a look at a few different pieces that we are experiencing as far as, the rents and what's going on in other parts of the world. So we have a full show, lots of things to talk about, and you definitely don't want to miss it. So let's do this. And good morning, good morning, good morning. Today is Friday, July 3rd, 2020. Holy mackerel, here we go. Independence Day, and we are still on the lockdown. Well, maybe not everybody, but there are people that are definitely on the lockdown, and there's some that sort of thought they were going to be free, yet we are reversing it one more time. That's the change of the times, the sign of the times, as they say, of things that are kind of happening that are interesting to monitor, to watch, and to learn from. And what I am learning is that, nothing is for certain. Nothing goes necessarily one direction only. Things are always going up and down and ever changing. And every so often, you get a funny one. Today, I do have a funny one. I don't know that you're going to find it funny, but I definitely did. Let me share with you. Hold on. Look at this. So I went in and I was actually looking for cryptocurrency news yesterday evening because I was getting ready for tomorrow's show where we're going to talk about cryptocurrencies. And under the cryptocurrency organizations, you have places like Coinbase, Cointelegraph, Gemini, and then you have, United States Department of Treasury and U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Then you go to Y Combinator, Binance, Kraken, and so on and so on. So this was the funny one for me to go in and take a look to only realize that miraculously SEC and Department of Treasury are apparently, at least as by Google, they qualify as cryptocurrency organizations. So there you go. That was the funny one that made me chuckle. I had to keep it on the screen just so that you can see it. All right. Now, talking about Treasury, there's some sort of, there's not some sort of, there's important news that are coming out of the Hill regarding the Treasury. Now, you know that the Treasury has just reached some sort of deal with the airlines where it's going to give them even more money to stay alive because we do keep things alive around here. Whether they should or shouldn't be is anybody's guess. But hey, that's exactly what we're doing. And now the Treasury approves $700 million loan to a company being sued for overcharging Pentagon. You would think that the government talks to each other. You'd be wrong. You would be wrong. And yes, there's a trucking company that basically has been sued in 2018 by the Department of Defense for overcharging them for basically making their loads much heavier than they actually are in reality, supposedly. And so they have been kind of battling this for a while. But the Treasury Department on Wednesday approved $700 million loan to YRC Worldwide, financially troubled trucking company that is also being sued by the Defense Department (DoD) for overpricing shipping costs. Now, the interesting piece is I actually highlighted some of the other things, but that all has disappeared, which is very, very interesting. Anyways, their stock has dropped, and the Treasury is basically decided they were going to give money to this particular trucking company, and now they will own about 30% of the stock. So government officially owns yet another company. Well, not completely, but 30%. That's a pretty darn large share. And what's best, that they own a company that is being sued by another department inside the government. So will they continue to sue each other? Probably not. Do I expect that it's going to drop? Absolutely, because but who knows? Who knows? Weird things have happened in the world, and so we will see. Speaking of the world, let's go in and take a look at what's going on around the world. We're not going to visit every country because we'll be here all day long, and by the time we finish, well, news are going to be old. But I think it's important to kind of cover some of the things. So let's take a look at the first article that we found. Europe stocks, US futures, and kind of let's take a look at sort of big picture overview of what's been going on as we head into the holiday weekend. And this weekend, we're going to focus a bit more on the cryptocurrencies because it is the market that is trading 24/7. It could care less if it's a holiday or not. So we'll be covering some of those things and some additional stuff. So you definitely want to tune in because we will be going live every single day, including tomorrow. We're going to celebrate together by learning of what's going on and how to make money to become independent. I mean, that's the goal, at least mine. European stocks turned lower with US futures on Friday. Stock 600 index erased an early advance with banks and oil gas shares dragging the gauge lower. Euro slipped as French President Emmanuel Macron asked his prime minister and his government to resign. Interesting things happening in France. American cash, equity, and bond markets are shut Friday for Independence Day. So there's nothing happening today. We're just going over the news so that we can get ready, understand what's been happening, and what your next move is going to come Monday, July 6th. Dollar was steady, although still heading for its first weekly drop in a month. Gold drifted just below 1,800 an ounce. Crude oil dipped but remained on track for a weekly gain. Now we're going to go into a bit of details in case you want to know, because I definitely want to know. Futures on the S&P 500 index increased 2%. Stocks Europe 600 index dipped 0.3%. MSCI Asia Pacific Index rose 0.9%. MSCI Emerging Market Index also was up 0.9%. Currencies. This is going to be a funny one yet again, and you'll understand why. Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rose 0.1%. I wouldn't even brag about it. Euro fell 0.1%. I wouldn't brag about it. British Pound sank 0.2%. I don't know that I would call that sinking, but okay. Thank you, Yahoo Finance. I guess they do have to make sure that people get excited about nothing. Onshore yuan was little changed. Japanese yen, little changed. Germany's 10-year bond yield sank 2 basis points. 2 basis points is 0.02%, y'all. So I don't know that I would call it sank, but again, to negative 0.45. Britain's 10-year yield fell 1 basis point to 0.175 positive. Japan's 10-year yield declined 1 basis point to 0.028. Basically, snoozer market everywhere. Crude dipped 1.4%. Brent crude dipped 1.3%. And gold little changed at 17.75 and 7 cents an ounce. That is the market overview around the world. As you can see, not much has happened. Pretty boring market, pretty boring market. Now, we do have some news coming from Turkey and Venezuela, so we're going to cover it. Let's go to Turkey first. Turkish news, Turkey inflation rate up in June. They're actually up in June 12.62%, up from 11.39 in May. So they're experiencing quite a bit. Let me make this bigger so you can actually see it in case you want to read along. But consumer prices in Turkey went up in June versus the same month last year. Annual inflation rate is at 12.62%, and lowest annual increase in inflation was 4.84% in communication, while the highest rise was in alcoholic beverages and tobacco with a whopping 22.41%. Their predicted annual inflation would climb to about, when they were analyzing this, they were predicting it's going to come to 12.14. They missed it by a little bit. As you can see, it is 12.62. One of the things that we've also learned is that the government is targeting to lower inflation to 8.5% in 2020. Now, what does this mean for Turkey? Well, it means that their money is basically collapsing, that the value of their Turkish lira can buy less on monthly basis today than it did only a month ago or a year ago for that matter. So when you have a high inflation rate and rising, that means that your local currency cannot buy much of anything. What happens then? So, right, this is part of the show is to go over the news, but part of the show is also to be able to learn from what's going on in the news to prepare in case this is happening in the country near you or the one that you happen to live in. So in this particular instance, what is happening is that the one currency starts losing, people actually start exiting the local currency and start getting into the dollars. We are seeing this in Zimbabwe. We're seeing this in Argentina. We're seeing this in Venezuela. We are seeing this in Libya, Sudan, Turkey. We're starting to see this. I want to say Ethiopia, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. My apologies if I am. Please let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comment section on YouTube if you're not watching this live. And by the way, if you're not watching this live, consider joining us tomorrow at 7 a.m. only on onedealaway.com. And make sure that while you're there on YouTube, do me a huge favor. Hit the like button, please. Hit the subscribe button and do hit the bell button so you get notified every single day when new episode comes your way, because we do this every single day. All right. So going back, so what ends up happening is that folks who cannot go into their own local currency, they actually will start getting into harder currencies. And right now, where the harder currencies, it kind of depends where you are and of your location. So I know a lot of the um, I'm going to call it Eastern European countries because of just where they're located. They tend to, when they experience challenges within their local currency, they tend to go into euro. Sometimes they might go into the British pound if it's a previous British colony. It's very typical of that. And then, of course, US dollars. So we see folks fleeing to those particular currencies when challenges erupt. What we're also seeing folks are doing when they can't do that legally, because oftentimes governments, banks will shut things down and you can't get into other currencies. It becomes illegal, so to speak, and you potentially could get yourself in a heap of trouble doing it. We start seeing quote unquote black markets develop, which basically, if you live in the United States, you're like, I don't even know what that is. Is that kind of like when you go and buy drugs? I don't know. I've never bought drugs, so I wouldn't be able to tell you on that. But as somebody who's lived through a financial crisis, civil wars, and all kinds of different things that I'd rather not go into details here because we'll be here forever. Um, but what ends up happening is you have basically folks that become entrepreneurs of the day. And, a bunch of people will stand there with a hard currency and will exchange it. And that exchange rate is going to be very different than the official rate that is happening. So, for example, official rate could be, and I don't know what the rate is because I haven't looked at it, but let just play along with me here for the sake of understanding how it all works. Say that you are in Turkey and you are earning Turkish lira, which is their official currency, but I just don't know the exchange rate of US dollar to lira. And say that 100 lira, for example, which is not, is equal to $1. That could be the official exchange rate between the two currencies. But However, when the shifts end up happening, the official rate nobody really pays attention to except for the government, who officially keeps on pushing that stuff out. The black market develops, and that becomes sort of the vote of the public. It's an official, unofficial, official market that everybody goes by. And in that black market, $1 instead of being 100 Turkish liras could be 1,000 or 100,000 or a million. We never, right? It's ever changing and ever shifting, and so that's kind of how it works. Now we also see nowadays with the cryptocurrencies rising, we do see that folks will get into the Bitcoin, for example, or Ethereum, but a lot of them will get into the Bitcoin and start holding that and exchanging that as well to be able to purchase goods and services. And of course, we see people going into physical gold and silver. However, physical gold and silver, when you hit some of these crises, are nearly impossible to buy. They don't exist. You can't get them. So folks typically go into hard currencies or they go into cryptocurrencies. And right now, I'm actually going to look at Turkish lira USD exchange, because now that we talked about it, I am actually very, very curious as to how how many dollars is the Turkish lira. And if we take a look, you will see 100 Turkish lira is actually just shy of $15. So there you go. I was grossly wrong, as you can see. But the nice part is you can see how the currency is sort of starting to drop down. And if we zoom out, you will see that it's very much, ever since 2008, Turkish lira has been dropping as compared to the US dollar. So you have to always compare it to something, whether it's the prices or another currency. Now, hydration. And it's time to switch to a different country. And in this case, we're going to Venezuela. Venezuela's oil exports crashed to a 77-year low amid crushing U.S. sanctions. Crude shipments from oil-rich Venezuela have hit new lows, tumbling in June to levels unseen since 1943. Caracas is struggling to reach buyers for its crude due to increasing U.S. sanctions. Scarce exports include 130,000 barrels sent to Europe, which were legal under exemptions. Supplies to Cuba rose to by about 15,000, and exports continue to fall as Trump administration tightens sanctions to cut Venezuela's oil exports. Mexican business became one of the latest victims of the U.S. political pressure. The U.S. plans to extend restrictions to include an additional 50 vessels to the list. Threat has already forced some tankers sailing towards Venezuelan shores to turn around, according to Reuters. Tankers already loaded with Venezuelan oil are reporting idling at sea across the world, unable to find buyers for their cargo. It is believed that at least 18.1 million barrels of unsold oil, equal to 2 months of Venezuela's production, is stuck on some 16 ships. This is very, very important because one of the things that, well, you might think that, well, this is Venezuela and, we don't really like them because Maduro is there illegally and blah, blah, blah. Whatever your beliefs are, I think it's important to recall a few key things. And that is that governments and sanctions do have an ability and a potential to cripple somebody. Now, whether this is being done because we don't like Maduro or we believe that their political things are, whatever the reasons are, you are seeing this around the world and you're noticing it with the United States. I mean, we are entering trade wars with China, Europe, South America. There's not much happening with Africa, unfortunately, because it's a hidden gem, in my personal opinion, because I think Africa is going to rise faster than anybody expects, and it's going to hit us like a thunder from a clear sky. That's at least my personal opinion. But again, you let me know yours in the chat or the comments, depending on when you're watching and where you're watching from. And I think that this is one of those things that is important because typically when you hit somebody with some sort of measure that is harming them, they often harm you back. and we are seeing this very nationalist movement happening in United States, but also around the world. That honestly is a bit scary. Now, perhaps globalism, the way that we've been doing it, is not working as perfectly as it could. I think that there are changes and shifts that we definitely should think about and consider doing because, some people were sort of losing, some people were gaining, and that kind of stuff, and it created some inequality. But I think if we turn completely nationalistic and only focus trading within ourselves, we potentially could be losing long term, and the history shows that when we go into some of these nationalistic sort of movements and beliefs, that typically not so great things evolve and emerge worldwide. If you don't believe me, just look at the history, and you don't even have to go far. Just jump on over to the 19 teens, 20s, and 30s to discover what has happened when these movements have transpired. So that is where my big concern comes from. Now, we're going to make a quick shift into one of the pieces to kind of close in something we talked about yesterday. And we've covered a real estate market quite extensively yesterday, but I just new news, I guess, jumped in at me early this morning, so I wanted to share with you really briefly, and then we're going to continue with the markets and kind of what's going on. San Francisco rent drops most on record as people flee for suburbs. So we talked about this earlier, and we've been talking about it for weeks now. How these large cities that are very urban, how people are fleeing it, going more suburban, going more rural, so to speak, looking for larger places, more space, how they're fleeing it. And that my expectation ever since February, March was that the prices, both rent and for purchase, are going to start dropping in these highly cyclical markets, San Francisco being one of those markets. Now, since we're talking about all these different things, I know we're kind of jumping around, but there's just so much good stuff happening that I feel like we have to cover on an ongoing basis. So, IMF is expecting Asian economy to shrink as it downgrades forecast. I wanted to kind of complete the trip around the world. We've covered, part of the Europe, Asia, part of the Latin America, and now let's go into the Asia and kind of I think we're going to cover a vast majority of the places around the world. I'm sure that we could find something in Africa. And speaking of Africa, there are quite a few countries that are seeing uprises and seeing yet another economic crisis. Zimbabwe comes to mind when we think about economic crisis, for example. The coronavirus outbreak has been very costly to Asian economic development as well as the rest of the world. Thank you very much. Asia's growth is expected to contract by 1.6%, a downgrade to the April's projection of zero. And they're basically saying that they're expecting their Asia to rebound strongly as early as 2021 to 6.6%. But again, this could change, and I personally expect it will. The region's economic output in 2020 will be about 5% lower compared with earlier predictions. And it also warned that there are clouds on the horizon which could undermine recovery. Those worrying signs include shrinking trade, longer than expected lockdowns, rising inequality, weaker balance sheets, and geopolitical tensions. Same stuff as I have been talking about. And, it's just one of those things that it's kind of scary when you look at some of these things, not just the economic impact, but everything else impact. And, frankly, economic impact impacts everything else. It's all interconnected. You cannot separate it. It's kind of like, I put in a bunch of fruits and veggies into a blender, blended it, made a smoothie, and now you are drinking all of it, whether you like that kale that I put in or not. If you drink the smoothie, you get all of it. So there's no way to separate after that. And that's kind of where we are in the world. IMF said that it expects a deeper recession in 2020 and slower recovery in 2021. And the global real GDP could shrink by 4.9%. this year, followed by a partial recovery with the growth at 5.4% in 2021. This would result in a cumulative loss to the global economy over 2 years of over $12 trillion from this crisis. But, when we talk about 12 trillion, I mean, that's basically what US is going to print alone in 2020 if it hasn't already, because I stopped counting. I probably shouldn't have, but I did. It's almost impossible to start keeping track with what's going on in the markets and what went up, what went down, and keep track of who's printing how much, because they are printing left, right, and sideways, y'all. They're buying everything, including the trucking companies that they are suing. Amazing, absolutely amazing. All right, and now we have the most important article that we're going to cover today, and it has to talk about employment slash unemployment and the fact that the government is either lying to us or is incompetent. Now, I don't know which of the two is correct. Personally, I don't know that I trust the government all that much. And, while I think that there are some very good people, very honest people, very trustworthy people, and very competent people, overall, I don't know that they're very good at much of anything. You can agree, you can disagree. Please let me know in the chat or the comments below of kind of where you stand and how you feel. But I feel like every time the government gets involved in something, they kind of muck it up. It sounds really good on the PR to get the seat into the government, and then eh, it has all of these unintended consequences that affect us, and nobody's willing to address them, shift them, change them, and unfortunately, that government official, again, not everybody, but vast majority, when they enter that seat, they could care less about you and me, our business, and our money as long as they get their share. And that, if you don't agree, that's fine, but that's just kind of how I feel about it because, we go into the pandemic, we go into the financial crisis, we're trying to figure out what's going on. Oil went negative, but the government went on recess. Here we are in the summer. People are struggling. There's no money. There's no jobs. We don't know what's going to happen next. We're trying to basically survive. Everybody has 3, 4, 5 jobs, just trying to keep up with life. Not trying to live luxuriously, just trying to keep up. And things are going to expire over the next few weeks. And guess what? Starting basically 4th of July, most of our government goes on yet another recess that is now almost a month long. Then they're going to come back basically to catch up at the water cooler for a few days, only to disappear yet another recess, probably sitting somewhere in Hamptons enjoying their Mai Tais. And the rest of the people, well, you're on your own. And, if that's kind of the reality that we have, which is the reality that I think we have, again, let me know what you think and how you feel about it. Then I want to start relying on myself. I want to stop relying on the government. I don't care what they promise. I don't care what they say. I could care less who got elected because at the end of the day, in my humble opinion, they're all exactly the same. Maybe different look, hairstyle, or color of their tie, but at the end of the day, I don't really trust any of them at all. So that's kind of how I feel. That's kind of when I stand. And but now let's go into the report. And enough of my political or anti-political rant, however you want to take it. So, here we go. This article is amazing. Never before have I seen so much fake unemployment and jobs data by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or Labor Department nails it. So, here we go. Let's take a look of what are they talking about and why, we are sort of kind of confused. Now, let's understand what happened. So, you have two different reports that kind of come out. You have the jobs report by Bureau of Labor Statistics that is released first Friday of the month. Then you have the unemployment claims that is released on Thursday of every week. This month is very special, not just because of the fact that it is Independence Day, celebration of independence of United States. And hopefully, this is going to inspire you to start thinking and celebrating your own personal financial independence from the government, from the jobs, and from everybody else. And if you want to do that, the best way, absolute best way to do that is to do two things. One, educate yourself on how to become a sovereign individual, financially independent from everybody and everything to protect yourself, regardless of whether the market goes up, down, sideways, whether the economy is going good, bad, or otherwise. And then the second thing is start investing and implementing your knowledge. If you're looking for your knowledge to improve so that next year you can actually celebrate as a truly financially independent individual, I invite you to join One Deal Away's Academy, where we teach folks all kinds of things from how to better, balance your money and how to, excuse me, budget, how to get out of debt, how to solve for that, credit card debt and student loan debt, how to invest in different asset classes that can protect you from all of this manipulation that is happening, and that you can buy some assets at a deep discount so that no matter what happens in the economy, you are still up and winning. That is the key. That is the key, but most people don't know how to do that. So if you want to learn how to do all of those things and much more being developed as we continue, then join me at the Academy. You go in to onedealaway.com and simply in the on demand tab, you're going to look for the Academy. In the Academy, you get every course we've ever created, from money to investing to business. Everything is in there, plus everything that we're going to be continuing to create to prepare you for everything that is coming. All right, back to the thing. I'm done rant. Maybe I'm not done ranting. We'll see. We'll see how the day goes. Uh, but here's what is interesting about this month. This is what I was going to talk about, and then I got on the tangent. Sorry about that. Uh, this month is very special. This week is very special because we get basically both reports on the same day. And the reason for it is because today is the holiday and nobody or almost nobody is working in celebration of 4th of July weekend. So now we have two reports on the same day, which makes it amazing that we can actually compare. Because in the past, what they have done is that you get one over here and one over here, and then you kind of have to like either remember what one said to compare it with the other one, or like really track it or really live in it. But now we have both reports next to each other, and it's easy to compare. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. The total number, okay, so the Labor Department, what did they report? Total number of people who continue to receive unemployment compensation the week that ended June 27 is up just shy of 1 million people in the week, and basically bringing us to 31.49 million people who are receiving unemployment. I bet you didn't hear this number in any show anywhere, especially not in the mainstream media. Okay? Now, here is the chart, and you will see that the blue is the state, red is the federal, the good times over here. You can see March, how we started to climb. And, they will have you believe that we're dropping. But look at this, y'all. We're not. We're not. We kind of had a little bit of a dip, and we're right back where we were. What is this? Mid-May, maybe, maybe a little bit even, maybe a little bit higher. Okay. The number of people receiving state unemployment insurance, which is the blue column, right? State unemployment insurance has essentially been flat for 3 weeks, and you can see it that it's not much changed. I would almost even say it for 4 weeks, like slightly dipped, but not much movement. But the number of people on federal unemployment program, including gig workers, which is red, has been soaring. And you can see, combined together, we are basically back where we were in mid-May, slightly higher. So 31.5 million is kind of where we are with unemployment. Now, what did the Bureau of Labor Statistics report at the same day, same time? Given the record number of unemployment insurance recipients, the Bureau of Labor Statistics dared to claim that the number of unemployed fell by 3.2 million in June to 17.8 million. Wait a minute. We just got one report from one government agency that number of unemployed is 31.5 million, but now a different agency, basically dealing with the same equation, just the other side of it, says, no, we are at 17.8 million. Interesting. Let's continue. Given that the record 31.5 million people were actually receiving state and federal unemployment insurance benefit in the latest week, and that this record number of people were actually unemployed as per Labor Department, the BLS is now underreporting unemployment by at least 13.7 million people. I want to know, where did these 13.7 million people go? Did they disappear? Like, what happened with them? And how is this even possible? The number of jobs jumped by 4.8 million in June, despite continued announcements of mass layoffs. Even as millions of people get laid off every month, many more millions of people are getting their jobs back, according to the BLS. This flies in the face of the record 31.5 million people now receiving unemployment insurance under state and federal programs. This is kind of where my question comes in. Who's lying? Because somebody is lying. The math doesn't make sense, right? If 31.5 million people are receiving unemployment, then the government is sending unemployment checks to those that are employed, which is wrong. Or the BLS is a giant big LS, right? Uh, uh, BS, so to speak. And they're lying, basically wanting to make everybody believe that we're doing much better than we actually are. So let's continue with the report. The number of weekly laid off people who filed their initial unemployment claims with state unemployment offices in the week ended June 27 was 1.427 million initial claims. This influx of newly unemployed under the state programs has now been in the same range for the third week in a row, further improving. Layoffs have continued in the same ferocity. So you can see the chart right here. This is why I love charts, because you can actually see what is going on. You can see that we hit the peak over in like April, and then we kind of started to we are off, and now we're sort of flattening, and you can see it pretty flat, super flat in the last 3 weeks, and mostly flat in the last 3 to 4 weeks. So you can see that claims have not slowed down. It's staying flat. The number of people who continue to claim unemployment insurance after having filed initial claim under the state program at least a week ago, the insured unemployed rose by basically 266,000 people to 17.92 million in the current week. Now, we have some additional things that are happening that may or may not be reported. Let's learn. There are people who receive federal unemployment insurance. Now, there is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. This is federal stuff. PUA, which covers gig workers, and there is just shy of 1 million that were processed by 47 states in the week ending June 27. There are 3 states that have not figured out how to process these federal PUA claims. Georgia, New Hampshire, and West Virginia fall in those 3 states. In total, 12.85 million gig workers continue to receive unemployment compensation under the PUA program, up by 1.79 million from week earlier. Gig workers now account for 41% of all people on state and federal unemployment rolls. Then we have a second program called Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, PEUC, covering those who have exhausted all rights to regular state and federal unemployment insurance, and this number has fallen to 750,000. But 13 states have not yet processed any claims under this program. Okay. Then we have other federal unemployment programs include claims by federal employees, which take down to 14,645 continued claims, and newly discharged veterans, which is up to 12,637 continued claims. Now, here we go. Official data chaos. BLS outdoes itself with the BS. So now, the Department of Labor reported this morning, or well, yesterday morning, the total number of people on unemployment insurance under all state and federal unemployment programs, including gig workers and other federally funded sort of unemployment, surged by just shy of 1 million people to a record of 31.5 million. That's the Department of Labor. They're saying we have 31.5 million people that we are giving unemployment checks to. Okay. At the same time, the Bureau of Labor Statistics wanted to make us believe by hook and crook that the number of unemployed people fell by 3.2 million in June to 17.8 million. The difference between those actually receiving unemployment insurance, 31.5 million, and those that the BLS claims are unemployed has today exploded to 13.7 million. It means 13.7 million people are somehow magically not accounted for. The BLS has underreported the number of unemployment by at least 13.7 million people. No one knows how many jobs were created on net, but it wasn't 4.8 million as the BLS tried to make us believe. The number of people still receiving unemployment insurance since the end of May has surged by 1.3 million people, according to Labor Department. So what they're saying that the number cannot be 4.8 million, and it has to be either a smaller positive number or a more likely negative number, meaning we lose more jobs than we are creating. It's going the reverse than what the BLS is saying. Now, to conclude, here is sort of the opinion coming from this article, and my opinion is kind of right there with it, as you likely guessed. I don't know whether it is under political pressure to produce its BS, this is for Bureau of Labor Statistics, or whether it's just incompetence. The BLS has lost all remaining credibility with this report and has totally fallen off the deep end. The dire unemployment data released today or yesterday, right? Was written yesterday. We're reading it today. So let's read it again so it makes more sense to you. The dire unemployment data released Thursday, July 2nd, by the Department of Labor got practically no airtime, and the BLS fake BS trumped, so to speak, all news coverage. So basically, nobody is talking about the fact that the Department of Labor is saying hey, there is 31.5 million people that are unemployed. They're still unemployed. Nobody's talking about it, right? They're all talking about the BLS fake news. I'm going to call it fake news that says, no, unemployment is just about 17 million. So there you go. I don't know whom you believe. I don't know who you trust. I just know that it's all wrong. And in looking around, I think more people are unemployed. So I kind of think that Department of Labor might have it a bit more correct. Now, both could be slightly wrong. But we also know that the Bureau of Labor Statistics have already in the past said, well, we know that our report was grossly wrong and we have underreported, but we're not going to correct it. And if you don't believe me, jump on the internet, look it up. I want to say it was about a month ago, maybe a little bit less. So take a look at it because you will see that that is a truth. So there you go. This is kind of what the news is. And as you can see, it's crazy around the world and it's not going to end anytime soon. Hopefully you have learned something new. Hopefully information that you have received here on Money Matters is going to help you as you progress through your day and the weekend. Make sure you join us tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time only on onedealaway.com. Make sure you check out the Academy if you truly want to celebrate Independence Day and become an independent and sovereign individual. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell button, and forward it on to a friend. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay forever money blessed. And do remember, you are only one deal away.